Funny thing about messages, most of them get twisted, lost, buried under all the noise people make. Everyone wants to talk. Everyone wants to preach. Everyone wants to play messenger. But every once in a while, something cuts through the chaos, sharp, clear, undeniable. Not a whisper, not a hint, not a coincidence, a direct line. A word that doesn't leave room for doubt, doesn't need translation, doesn't care about your excuses. It's not dressed up in rituals or dressed down in fancy speeches. It's raw, it's simple, and it's meant for you. Clarity cuts through the noise, and isn't that what makes it so uncomfortable? People spend their lives swimming in distractions, drowning in chatter, surrounding themselves with voices that say a whole lot of nothing. Advice from this one, opinions from that one, endless noise from every direction. It's comforting in a twisted way, because when everything is loud, you don't have to face what's real. But clarity is ruthless. It doesn't compete with the noise. It slices through it. One clean strike, and suddenly all the excuses, all the diversions, all the masks fall silent. That's why people fear it. Because once clarity appears, there's nowhere left to hide. Noise is safe. You can blame it, hide in it, get lost in it. You can say, I didn't know. I couldn't hear. I wasn't sure. But clarity robs you of that safety net. When a word comes through so sharp, so undeniable, it leaves you exposed. It leaves you face with the truth you've been running from. There's no more, maybe later. No more. I'll figure it out eventually. The message is clear, and because it's clear, it demands something from you. It demands your attention. It demands a response. And most people aren't ready for that. The funny part is, clarity doesn't shout. It doesn't need to. It's not the booming voice. It's not the dramatic performance. It's quiet, almost unsettlingly so. Because when something is clear, it doesn't need volume. It needs only presence. It arrives like a blade of glass in the middle of chaos. Everything else blurs, fades, becomes irrelevant, while the truth stands in perfect focus. That's why it rattles you. That's why it sticks. Because in a world full of echoes, clarity is the only voice that doesn't repeat. It pierces. And once it pierces, you can't unhear it. You can pretend sure. You can bury it, drown it out with more noise. Distract yourself with 1,000 meaningless things. But it doesn't disappear. Clarity has a way of tattooing itself on your mind. It waits. It lingers. It comes back in the quiet moments, when there's nothing left to drown it out. The more you try to ignore it, the louder it becomes, not because it raises its voice, but because silence leaves it with nowhere to hide. That's the power of a direct message. It doesn't waste time with riddles. It doesn't need a puzzle or a parable to make its point. It arrives as it is, sharp and undeniable. You don't get to twist it into something more convenient. You don't get to dress it up in pretty words to make yourself feel better. It doesn't bend for you. You bend for it. And that's what makes clarity feel so heavy, because deep down, you already know it's the truth. The noise in your life will always try to fight against it. People will tell you, no, it's not that serious. No, it doesn't mean that. No, you're overthinking. But the clarity you felt doesn't need their approval. It doesn't need validation from a crowd. You know when something cuts deeper than anything else around it. You know when the words don't just brush against you, they carve into you. That's how you recognize clarity. It changes you, even in an instant. Most people run from it. But here's the irony: clarity is what they've been asking for all along. They pray for answers, beg for direction, cry for purpose, and when clarity finally shows up, they panic. Because answers are never as comfortable as questions. Direction is never as easy as wandering. Purpose is never as light as distraction. Clarity cuts. But it cuts because it removes the nonsense, strips away the illusions, and forces you to see what's real. And once you see it, you can't go back to blindness. Clarity cuts through the noise because it was never meant to compete with it. It was meant to silence it. And that silence, that sudden stillness, that moment when all the fake voices fall away and only the truth remains, that's the moment that changes everything. Some words are too sharp to ignore, no matter how badly you want to pretend they don't exist. They don't slide off your skin like casual chatter. They don't blend into the static of everyday noise. They sink, they stick, they cut. And once they cut, you can't patch yourself up with the usual lies. You can't laugh it off. You can't drown it in distractions. You can't pretend you didn't hear it. That's the thing about words that carry weight. They leave marks deeper than scars. Marks that don't fade just because you close your ears. People think they're good at ignoring what they don't want to hear. They scroll past it. They change the subject. They surround themselves with people who'll tell them the softer version, the sugar-coated version. But when a message is too sharp, it slices straight through all those defenses. It doesn't care about your comfort. It doesn't care if you're ready. It doesn't care if you've built a fortress of excuses around your heart. Sharp words don't knock politely. They break in. And you know when you've been cut by one. There's no confusion, no second guessing. You feel it in your chest, that sting, that ache that refuses to leave. Maybe it comes in the middle of the night, when the world finally goes quiet, and there's nothing left to shield you. Maybe it hits you in the middle of a crowd, where no one notices you've just been pierced, where you smile on the outside, but inside you're bleeding. Either way, you can't shake it. You can't unhear it. It follows you, no matter how far you try to run. The reason those words feel so sharp is because they bypass the illusions. Most talk is meant to keep you comfortable. People tell you what you want to hear, what won't disrupt your fragile little balance. But when the truth arrives, it doesn't bother with comfort. It doesn't soften the blow, doesn't sugar-coat the edges. It arrives raw, unpolished, and because of that, it slices straight through the fog. It exposes everything you've been trying to cover up, and that exposure, it terrifies people. Because once you've been cut by truth, you can't go back to pretending. You can't patch yourself with the lies that used to work. You can't look at yourself the same way. Suddenly, you see the cracks, the flaws, the reality you've been burying under smiles and excuses. It hurts, but it's also undeniable. And the more you try to silence it, the sharper it becomes. Like a splinter you refuse to pull out. It digs deeper, festers, spreads until the pain is unbearable. That's why ignoring sharp words never works. They don't fade with time. They grow. They echo louder in your head the more you try to suppress them. Every distraction you build collapses under their weight. Every excuse you invent crumbles when confronted by their edge. Because these words weren't meant to be ignored. They weren't meant to be filed away with all the meaningless chatter of the world. They were meant to cut. They were meant to wound. Because sometimes the wound is the only way you'll finally pay attention. And maybe that's the point. Pain forces focus. A cut makes you stop, makes you notice, makes you care. If words didn't hurt, you'd keep walking past them, brushing them off like background noise. But the ones that slice, those are the ones designed to wake you up. They bleed you on purpose, not to destroy you, but to strip you of your numbness, to remind you that you're alive, that you still feel, that you can't live forever pretending everything is fine. So when a message slices through, when it refuses to leave you alone, when it stings long after the sound has faded, that's not an accident. That's the truth demanding to be acknowledged. Not with polite nods or half-hearted agreement, but with your full attention. You can dodge it for a while, bury it under layers of noise, but the cut will always remind you it's there. And the deeper it goes, the harder it becomes to ignore. Excuses don't change the message, but people love to believe they do. They stack them up like bricks, building walls so high they convince themselves the truth can't climb over. I'm not ready yet. I'll try tomorrow. I didn't have the chance. Little phrases, tiny shields, flimsy armor to soften the sting of what's already been said. But here's the thing. The message doesn't bend just because you don't feel like facing it. It doesn't rewrite itself to fit your comfort zone. It doesn't pause, waiting politely for you to be in the mood. The message remains what it is, no matter how many excuses you spit out to protect yourself. People have this funny talent for twisting reality into something easier to swallow. They'll tell themselves the timing was wrong, that life was unfair, that someone else had it easier. Excuses are like bandages slapped over wounds without ever cleaning them. They don't heal anything. They just hide the infection festering underneath. And while you're busy covering the pain with stories, the truth is still there, waiting unchanged, unmoved by your attempts to dress it up. The message doesn't care about your reasoning. It doesn't stop existing because you've convinced yourself you have a valid excuse. Imagine standing in the middle of a storm and saying, "I don't believe in rain." You're still soaked. You can say, "It's not fair. I didn't bring an umbrella." You're still wet. The storm doesn't listen. The storm doesn't care. That's the nature of truth. It isn't swayed by your side of the story. It simply is. But that's why excuses feel so comfortable. They give you the illusion of control. They let you pretend you're not ignoring the truth, just postponing it. They let you believe you're the victim of circumstance, not the architect of your own avoidance. Excuses don't remove the message. They just buy you time. Or at least, they trick you into thinking they do. But while you're stalling, life keeps moving, opportunities keep passing, and the message you're dodging keeps cutting deeper every time you circle back to it. And you do circle back to it. No matter how far you run, the message waits for you. It creeps into your silence. It sneaks into your dreams. It stares back at you when you're lying in the dark with nothing left to distract yourself. Because you can pile on excuses all you want, but they don't erase the truth. They just make it heavier, pressing down on you with the weight of all the time you wasted pretending it wasn't there. That's the cruel part about excuses. They feel protective in the moment, but they always betray you. You tell yourself, I can't do it because I don't have enough time. 1 year later, you look back and realize time was never the problem. It was your own fear. You tell yourself, I can't because I don't have enough strength. Then you realize strength only comes after you start. Excuses are lies you tell yourself so you can stay still without guilt. But guilt doesn't vanish. It grows. And eventually, the realization hits the message never changed. But you wasted all this time trying to change the story around it. Excuses don't make you safer. They just make you slower. They don't protect you. They paralyze you. The message doesn't soften because you begged it to. It doesn't adjust itself because you weren't ready. It stays sharp. It stays clear. And it waits for you to either face it or keep bleeding from the cuts you've been pretending not to feel. And the longer you hide, the sharper it feels when you finally face it. That's the truth about excuses. They may feel like a shield, but really they're just chains. They don't keep the message out. They keep you locked in. And while you rattle those chains, convincing yourself they're armor, the truth stands there, unchanged, untouched, waiting for the moment you finally run out of lies to tell yourself. Simplicity carries the deepest truth, but people don't like simple. No, they prefer complicated answers, tangled words, riddles wrapped in rituals and rules, because simple is dangerous. Simple can't be twisted into whatever you want it to mean. Simple doesn't leave room for games. It just stands there raw, naked, undeniable. And that's why it cuts deeper than the most elaborate explanation. Because there's no wiggle room, no escape hatch, no place to hide when the truth shows up wearing nothing but itself. Think about it. The world loves to dress everything up. They build systems. They invent fancy words. They pile on layers until you can't even see the heart of the thing anymore. They call it wisdom. They call it culture. They call it knowledge. But what it really is, distraction. It's a shield to protect fragile minds from the brutality of something simple. Because if it's simple, then there are no excuses. If it's simple, then you can't pretend you don't understand. And if you can't pretend, then you have no choice but to face it. The truth isn't hidden in thousand-page books or locked away in complicated codes. It's in the small things, the words you've heard 1,000 times, but ignored because they seemed too obvious. Do what's right. Be honest. Stop lying to yourself. Simple. So simple it's uncomfortable. Because if it's really that straightforward, then what's your excuse for not living it? That's why people reject simplicity. They're not confused, they're afraid. Simplicity doesn't entertain. It doesn't soothe. It doesn't let you play endless games of what if and maybe later. It grabs you by the throat and says, "This is it. You already know." And knowing is the part that burns. Because once you know, you can't unknow. You can't hide behind the illusion of mystery anymore. You're exposed. And exposed people have to make a choice. Either act on the truth or betray it. Both hurt, but at least one of them leads somewhere real. And the funny thing, people will travel across the world, spend fortunes, chase endless teachers and mentors, all in search of a message they already had inside them from the start. But because it was simple, they didn't value it. They thought the truth had to be hidden in some distant temple, written in a secret language, guarded by people smarter than them. They ignored the whisper in their own chest because it wasn't glamorous enough. And yet, when all the noise fades, when all the masks drop, the voice that's left is the one that was there the whole time. Simplicity feels heavy because it refuses to entertain your imagination. It doesn't twist itself into your comfort zone. It just stares you down, unflinching, until you admit it's been right in front of you all along. And the longer you run from it, the more painful it becomes to realize how much time you wasted chasing complexity that never gave you answers. But that's what makes simplicity powerful. It doesn't need decoration. It doesn't need validation. It doesn't need 1,000 voices to repeat it. It just is. Pure, clear, sharp. And when it cuts, it leaves a wound that can't be ignored. Not because it's cruel, but because it's real. And reality, stripped of all the fancy words, all the noise, all the distractions, is always simple. Too simple to avoid. Too simple to escape. Too simple to ignore once it's in front of you. Direct messages demand direct action. And that's where most people freeze. They love the idea of signs, of whispers, of hidden meanings they can twist and debate for years. They like puzzles because puzzles give them time. They can sit around, dissect every piece, argue over interpretations, and in the meantime, they don't have to move. But a direct message leaves no such luxury. It doesn't arrive dressed in riddles. It doesn't give you endless room for interpretation. It comes sharp, clear, impossible to misunderstand. And because it's undeniable, it demands something from you right now. Not later, not someday. Now. That's why people flinch when they hear it. Because deep down, they know what it means the second it lands. They don't need to consult 100 voices or search for hidden translations. They already know. The clarity burns in their chest, and with it comes the uncomfortable truth. They can't keep stalling. They can't keep pretending. The message has arrived, and it won't wait politely for them to grow brave. But action is terrifying. See, thinking is safe. Planning is safe. Even worrying is safe. Those things don't change anything, but they give you the illusion of progress. Action. Action rips away the safety net. Action forces you to commit. Once you move, once you choose, there's no crawling back to the comfort of indecision. And that's why a direct message feels so heavy. It doesn't allow you to hide in the gray areas anymore. It shoves you straight into black and white. And people hate black and white. They crave the blur, the fog, the in-between. Because the blur lets them drift without consequence. But when a direct message lands, there is no blur. There is no mist. There's only the demand staring you in the face: act or don't. Move or stay. Live or waste. No more debates. No more half measures. No more excuses. And that's when the fear sets in. Because they know action costs something. It costs comfort. It costs the easy rhythm of routine. It costs the fragile illusions they've been living under. A direct message threatens to rip away everything familiar and replace it with the unknown. And people would rather live in chains they understand than step into freedom they can't predict. But the irony is, not acting is still an action. Pretending to ignore the message, pretending you didn't hear it, choosing to bury it under noise, that's still a choice. You can't escape the demand just by staying still. Stillness is a response, and that response always comes with consequences. The message doesn't dissolve because you refused it. It lingers. It waits. It sharpens the weight of regret with every passing moment you chose silence over movement. The scariest part: the direct message isn't always grand. Sometimes it's small, simple, almost unimpressive. But that's what makes it dangerous. You can't brush it off as coincidence. You can't dress it up with theories. You know, instantly it was for you. And that knowing alone makes it impossible to go back to life as if nothing happened. Direct action doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't mean you'll get it all right. It just means you don't get to sit on the sidelines anymore. It means the moment has arrived where you either take the step or you admit you chose not to. And once you admit that, you lose the illusion of ignorance. So when that clear, sharp word slices through, when it leaves no room for argument, the demand is simple: act, move, do. Not tomorrow, not when you feel more ready, not after another round of excuses, now. Because the message didn't come dressed in riddles. It came direct. And direct doesn't negotiate. Direct doesn't stall. Direct waits only long enough for you to realize there's no way out but forward.